Welcome, welcome everyone. We're so excited to be holding another webinar. We are continuing our summer series, which is called Delivering Delight in the New Normal. We're excited to say we've got attendees tuning in from South Africa, from Italy, from the UK, from the good old US of A. We're excited to be participating today, presenting to you a webinar called Changing the Way We Eat. We have expert panelists with us today, and we're excited to introduce our lovely ladies who are joining us today. We've got Kristen, a registered dietitian and nutritionist from Bon Appetit management company at Adobe. Kristen, welcome.
Thanks, Sarah and Jennifer. I'm so excited to be here today. My name is Kristen. I'm the registered dietitian at Adobe with Bon Appetit management company. And I've been a dietitian for about 4 years now, and now working in corporate worksite wellness. I run seminars and one-on-one consultations with employees and do a lot of collaboration and strategy work for Adobe's employee worksite experience. So I'm happy to be here and to share my insights with all of you.
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And then we've also got another lovely lady, Alyssa Pizzurro from Food Labs at WeWork. She is the Food Labs manager at WeWork's Labs San Francisco. Welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you so much as well. Incredibly happy and excited to be here. I've worked with you two lovely ladies for quite some time now. And prior to that was in restaurant operations in New York City, worked for Danny Meyer at the Union Square Hospitality Group at both the Modern and the cafes in the Museum of Modern Art. Moved out to San Francisco to help open a restaurant, then found my way to WeWork, where I have now been a part of Food Labs for almost a year. So very exciting. We help food brands, food tech, really reach their next level. So we really help founder-focused companies.
Jennifer, Sarah, you're muted, so we can't hear you.
Yeah, you're muted.
Okay.
So we didn't hear anything you just said in the beginning.
Okay, sorry about that. So as I was saying, that right now in the face of COVID, we see a lot of interesting consumer trends on the rise. Specifically, today we're going to be covering trends such as the rise in a desire on the base of the consumers for better for you foods. And we're going to be navigating the conversation today with Alyssa and Kristen, with us from WeWork and Bon Appetit at Adobe, with regards to what are we recognizing as we are navigating this space ourselves as food service professionals. How are we seeing consumers respond in the face of COVID? So Sarah's going to share her screen, and we are going to talk through some of the trends that we are noticing in the face of COVID. Definitely with regards to consumers looking for an increased sense of trustworthiness and comfort. So a sense of coming back to the core. A lot of consumers are looking to support local, and they are looking to have more unique experiences that not only are innovative and fun, but also increase their sense of comfort and safety in the face of everything else that is a little less sure right now. And then, of course, in these uncertain times, I think there's a craving for nostalgia, a craving to kind of go back to the retro and to those things that we cherished as children, let's say, kind of revisiting where our hearts really lie. So we see a lot of really some of these more retro brands really coming up and taking center stage, and really just helping increase delight in the hearts and minds and lives of the consumers as we all shelter in place and search for new ways to really offer and deliver delight to our friends and family. As well as that, home experiences are obviously on the rise. Consumers are experiencing more, they're staying at home more, and yet they're wanting to continue to have unique and heartwarming experiences around the culinary table in the midst of the kitchen and so on. And so brands are being inspired right now to innovate with regards to how do we continue to engage our consumers, how do we continue to empower them, and how do we work to innovate in making the home the core experience for our consumers and our customers. I know this is an issue that's really close to Jen's heart, so I'll let her launch into this.
Is it close to my heart?
So obviously in the face of Corona and all of the other interesting things that are happening in our society right now, COVID has definitely accelerated the consumer's interest in food safety. And here at Crema Lusso, I think that's been something that's really, really impacted us or really helped us to feel that we have a position within all of this, in that we consumers want to know that the products that they're buying are sustainably manufactured, carefully handled, sustainably packaged, and so on. And we as food service professionals, we want to continue to increase our level of transparency to the consumer on these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's really interesting to see, and we've touched upon this in other webinars during this summer series, the touchless economy and just the really creative ways that such a challenging moment is inspiring those of us here in the food service world to really step up and kind of find new and innovative ways to really engage with our customers and with our consumers, and yet be able to offer them a sense of safety and security as they interact with us. So this whole touchless economy that we see rising up, and I think Alyssa and Kristen will both have really interesting things to speak to about this. But being able to deliver that intimacy, that personal touch, that high touch, and yet touchless, a really interesting phenomenon that's happening right now. But I think that we're being forced to embrace right now, and we're really hoping that it's something that people will be so excited about that they're going to want to continue this even after the age of social distancing is I don't know, a thing of the past, I guess. Hopefully. In the face of pandemic, we all feel a little bit vulnerable. We all feel a little bit insecure at certain times. And so we're definitely looking for superhero ingredients that are going to give us a sense that we are continuing to thrive, that we're continuing to survive, that we will persevere in the face of uncertainty. Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing that COVID has really drawn our attention to is the strain on the planet. I think this is in a certain sense, maybe those higher forces kind of saying, okay, everyone calm down, let's just take a step back and let's just breathe for a moment. So, the going vegan, the vegan trend, which we've all seen on the rise in the past few years, I think that too is experiencing an acceleration now at this time. We're excited to say that here at Crema Lusso, where our dairy-based, ready-to-use desserts mix is all the rage. I think that once we release our vegan formula, which is set for Q4 of this year, it's gonna just take off with flying colors, and we're really excited about that. Again, that's something that's very close to mine and Jen's heart as well. And again, just to speak quickly to how COVID-19 is encouraging us to continue to be innovators and push the boundaries and push ourselves forward with regards to what we thought we could achieve. As food service professionals, again, we're wanting to respond to our consumers' needs. And so this is an opportunity for us to maybe take some of those ideas that we had percolating in the back of our heads or that we had scheduled for like year 5 and pull them forward and say, how can we continue to be creative? How can we continue to respond to the needs of our consumers in a new and unique way in this current climate? So some of those ways are with regards to cooking content. So, we can be logging onto websites, our consumers can be logging onto websites and looking at recipes that are just in print text, and then kind of having to navigate the process of preparing that recipe, in the safety or quiet of their own kitchen without anybody to sort of facilitate it. Or we can take it to a new level and elevate that experience, so that not only are we providing our consumers with recipe content, but also with live interactive recipe creation sessions.
And of course, elevating the novelty, where novelty or kind of going into that creative space that you haven't ventured into before, as like, let's say a home cook who maybe, you're just barely getting started. Maybe you don't have any professional training, or you're just wanting to do something that fascinates the kids, let's say, that we as brands, especially as we become more virtual, we're thrust into this space. I think we really can embrace it and kind of offer new and interesting ideas to embrace that novelty at home also, and to continue to deliver delight, which is the topic of our summer series here at Crema Lusso.
As well as obviously continuing to be innovative with regards to our packaging, rethinking the safety and the sustainability around our packaging, as things are continuing to transition in the direction of a lot of takeaway, a lot of eating in at home. Restaurants obviously still want to be up and running. So instead of having the dine-in experience, they're also offering much more takeout. So how can we continue to partner together and innovate with regards to the packaging that we're supplying? So I'm just going to throw this out at one of our panelists, and I'm just going to choose Kristen. So Kristen, do you think that COVID-19 has changed consumers' eating habits? And if so, do you think that it's been for the better or for the worse?
Yeah, I really like this question because I think we can definitely say that eating habits have changed. When it gets to if it's better or worse, I would say it depends. And that's a really classic answer that I like to give, because, some people, I'm finding a lot of my clients who've, come into the pandemic with a really strong framework around their nutrition and their fitness, mindset. They have been able to be quite resilient, and they're able to continue with a lot of the good habits that they had established prior to going into quarantine. And then others who perhaps maybe didn't really have a strong plan, it's very easy for them to relapse back into those old habits. Another thing that I've seen is, in terms of specific eating habits, is snacking, and just grazing throughout the day has really picked up, just because we know that, cooking 3 meals a day is really tiresome. There's a lot of cooking fatigue that's going on right now. And people are really looking for those quick and easy food items that they can have in between meetings, or maybe if parents have young kids at home, what can they sneak in during nap time for the kids? And I think parents are really one of the hardest hit demographics during this quarantine, because they have to juggle work, also with their kids' homework. Kids are going back to school now and their daily schedule. So it's really a constant struggle to do it all.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I mean, I think it's really interesting, Kristen, because when we began this summer series, we did, our first webinar was on trends. And some of the statistics we were looking at showed, I think, a 35% increase in people who had originally been kind of hitting up the fast food chain 2-3 times a week, that was decreasing. But now, as we're further on into it, and I think as we're further on into this, this strange and unusual moment that we're all living through, we see some people kind of going, you know what? I mean, I started out really hardcore and I was going to continue my routines. I was going to stay healthy. And now it's like, we're talking about the COVID-19 pounds that everyone has put on. That's what I keep hearing again and again. What do you see? I mean, like, honestly,
Well, so before we ask what Kristen and Alyssa see statistically, I think it would be a fun opportunity to post up our poll.
Yes.
So to allow our participants, our attendees, to participate. So Sarah's going to post a poll, and it's just one question with 2 multiple choice answers. So those attendees who are here with us, this is the chance for your voices to be heard. And the question is, around the subject of, are people indulging more or less in sweets and desserts at this time? So since COVID has hit, how has this affected your indulgence in sweets and desserts? Are you indulging in more desserts? Are you indulging in less desserts and sweets? So we're just going to give our attendees a chance to click in their answers here for another couple of seconds. And we're going to allow this to kind of inform our next question to our expert panelists. So we've got questions coming in, we've got answers coming in, we're seeing the numbers go up. I think everybody else can see this too, right? So I don't have to, I don't have to dictate it.
Interesting.
So more sweets and desserts we're seeing coming through. Definitely that's been it for me. All right, we're just going to give it take it up.
We can't see the poll results.
But you can't. Okay. No. So far it's absolutely, we're going to go ahead and end the poll, and we're going to share the results. Can you see those now? Okay. So absolutely people are indulging in more sweets and desserts. We've got 75% of our attendees indulging in more sweets and desserts, 25 of those who are extremely committed and very health focused, indulging in less sweets and desserts. So attendees, you can go ahead and just close that from your screen by clicking the little red X on the top left corner of the poll window, so that you can see our panelists' faces in full view. They're lovely faces. And so based on that, we see a lot of people indulging in more sweets and desserts. So I'm going to throw this out at Alyssa, and I'm sure that Kristen's probably going to have some things to say to this too. But as we see people indulging in more sweets and desserts, if they're also wanting to think about their immune systems, how do, Alyssa, throw in what you think, Kristen, jump in as you feel inspired. How do you think we can integrate health boosting ingredients and indulgent foods?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the increase in sweets kind of comes with the being able to hide in your home and not being judged on what you're eating. I think in the workplace, people are watching you. And so I think you're a bit more conscious of what you're consuming, because brands really represent you as a person. But if you can eat a bag of Doritos in your home with no judgment, you can go ahead and do that. Or same thing with sweets. But what we are seeing in the consumer packaged good category is the better for you ingredients. So even a lot of our members are looking at, hey, like I love milk tea. How do I incorporate better for you ingredients, alternative milks, the ability for me to drink this and not feel guilty or heavy or bogged down. We also have a company which is really amazing that has chocolate bites, but they're completely vegan and they have B12 or vegan collagen in them. So while they understand that the consumer does maybe want that sweet treat, it's also giving you benefit and boosting your mood or adding those nutritional values to you. So I think a lot of founders are understanding the trend is that people still are going to indulge in sweets. And while they are health conscious, we're not perfect. We're going to have those cravings and we're going to want to dive into them. But how do we do this in a way that I don't feel like I need a nap or like I need to work out for an additional hour or however, because I think it's a bit psychological as well of like, you're home, you're working so much. How do I squeeze in a workout, but also eat well? And just like Kristen said, there is that whole needing to balance your schedule now. So I do think that there are better for you products that are truly coming to market. And I think people, now that going to the grocery store is like your event, I think people are more so leaning towards grocers that like Whole Foods or I mean, even Trader Joe's is kind of getting to that market, but with their own branding on some of these products. So it's very interesting how we have founders that are launching these things, and then even large grocers are kind of mimicking these trends. You'll see a lot of like alternatives at Trader Joe's now and what have you. So I think that answers the question, but definitely better for you products are on the rise, and people are willing to go out of their way to go to a grocer where they're going to be able to find these snacks or ability to have quicker foods that have those ingredients in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just one thing to just like jump in on that, when we're, the survey and the poll was definitely the answer that I expected, which is, people are definitely, eating and indulging more in sweets and desserts. But we've also seen, at least among the Adobe employee population, is definitely a lot more baking, a lot of home cooked sort of foods. And I think baking is one of those fun sort of food projects where it kind of straddles the sweet side as well. And so we've even been toying around with, doing healthy baking, and doing healthy comfort foods. Those things kind of come to mind. How do we insert more fruits and vegetables into our cooking to help boost the nutritional profile in the foods? So that even if you are indulging in, let's say, a mac and cheese, which is like the ultimate comfort food, what are ways that we can, lighten up the sauce, or maybe choose zoodles instead of, regular pasta. So people are looking for those kinds of alternatives so they can still have that bit of comfort, but not feel a lot of guilt or need to take a nap after their meal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's also, speaking of baking, I live with the founder of a cookie company, and she was really coming up with like how to use like kvass flour or like low glycemic syrup instead of certain sweeteners. And so there really are like just date syrup, or whether that's like even agave, which isn't like as good as true dates, but it is very true that people still want that indulgence, and they want to bake, or even that rise of like everyone baking bread. People are going back to that like slow food movement a bit as well, which is really amazing to see. But like, where are the two worlds colliding, I think has been really cool to see in the trends these days.
And do you find that that's expressing itself, and this is for Kristen or Alyssa, do you find that that's expressing itself differently through different demographics with regards to cooking at home and the ease of cooking at home, or the implementation of healthier ingredients and so on?
Yeah, I can take this one first. When I think about this question about different demographics and who's kind of eating better or worse, and who is cooking more, I would say there's two main groups that I have really worked with and seen some really interesting trends. So in particular, young adults. So young adults are kind of in this age range where they're independent, but not quite so independent where they wouldn't move home during the quarantine. So we've seen actually a lot of that, where a lot of young adults who maybe they just have their first job, they're not super independent yet. Since the quarantine hit, a lot of them have actually moved home to their parents' house. And so, if we've actually seen an increase in their overall nutrition, because a lot of the cooking, grocery shopping, meal planning actually falls to the parents now. And parents tend to provide more balanced meals when the whole family is together. And we see a lot of benefits of eating together as a family. So I see a lot of my clients who are in that younger demographic, their nutritional profile is actually being boosted. And there's also those who maybe don't want to move home and they're still living on their own. For them, we see that, they're definitely eating out less. I've had clients who used to, pre-pandemic, eat out almost every day because that was their form of social activity, social eating, going out with friends. But now they're finding that they're a little bit lost. They're just at home and they really are just focusing on what are things that are simple, what are things that don't take a lot of time that I can just put together and eat. And it may not have the best nutritional profile for them, but they're really not necessarily looking for nutrition as the first priority. They're just looking for what's something simple, what's something quick that doesn't take too much time. And then of course with parents, and I won't dive too much into this, but certainly parents with young kids, I think they've always found it difficult to make nutritious foods that their kids will also eat. So it's very difficult to say, okay, I want to, as a parent, I want to make delicious food that's also nutritious for me, but if my kids don't eat it, then what do you do? And I think that has always been a universal challenge.
Mm-hmm. So Alyssa, do you think that the eating habits that we see, cropping up in the face of COVID. Do you think that these are going to stick after the pandemic, or do you think that people are going to shift back to looking at convenience options again?
I mean, yes, and it's a bit of speculation. I mean, I like have done the young adult thing. I went home for a little while. I came back. So like I've seen probably every spectrum of this. And I think as somebody that doesn't yet have a family, cooking just for yourself and cooking healthy meals it was like a bit of like a, how do I tackle this correctly? Because when you're out in all of these restaurants downtown where you're working, you can just go grab a salad or do these other things. But now like you're home and that's like on you, and produce goes bad, and you're like learning all these like things that you should like honestly know, but harder for a family or like meal prepping. So a funny thing that happened was like our apartment just completely just started sharing the fridge, which was like an interesting trend. But I do think that everyone is kind of during this time, like, let me experience like the vegan diet, or is this something that would make my body feel better? And I think there has been a lot of experimentation, and I think people are going to grab the things that made them feel good, and maybe do away with a little bit of and I don't want to call it shameful eating, because I think it's amazing to like have, or like do you, as long as you're like putting your health first, like no shame in that. But I do think that there's some coping eating happening, and I think that may go away as they are filling their time with other things. I think now it's like, okay, Netflix and like a glass of wine, and like, what am I going to be eating with that? So I do think as we move in the direction of more normalization, or even just at least getting back maybe to the office like 3 times a week, let's say, or implementing like old habits, I think it will swing back in a direction of other things. But I don't think people are going to let go of what they learned of how their body feels. I think it's very hard to forget that that is good. I think there will be an adjustment period though, because I think we adjusted to this now, which is really interesting, and how we adjust back. And I think, like I said, I do think there's going to be like a hybrid that happens. But again, I believe that's a bit of speculation on my end.
So as we start reopening, just, you know, kind of shifting back to us speaking as food service professionals, and and both Alyssa and Kristen as being professionals within the business and industry sphere, as you begin to reopen, you know, your headquarters and your you know, your satellite offices and so on. And obviously you're still overseeing what's happening in the food and beverage sphere of that environment. How are you going to ebb and flow? How is the ebb and flow going to happen with regards to responding to the new desires and interests and habits that have you know, begin to rear their heads, and yet still also continue to encourage your employees as they start to come back to work to focus on their health and focus on their immunity and so on? Difficult question.
Too early for those plans to be put in place, I would think.
I mean, I think people are going to maybe like forget when they first come back that like I have to meal prep and like bring food for myself. I think like as I've integrated back into the office, I'm like, my kitchen is no longer down the hall from where I'm working all day. And I think it like, it just as like a human being, like just like relearning, there's gonna be like a bit of a relearning, but I do think people are going to see the benefit of how much money they saved during COVID. So either they're going to be like, I saved all this money, I can just like eat out and plan less, or like really reap the benefit of that. I think it really is going to be dependent person on person, and within your own company, I think the onus is on the individual. I'll be curious how like, I mean, obviously working at WeWork, there are thoughts around how we provide food options as people come back to the office. And there's a lot of fun innovation happening there as well. And understanding food safety being a premier focus, and that traffic of people are going to be a bit less wanting to come into the office, leave the office, come back into the office. So I think we have to understand those trends and what that will look like. I think maybe I touched upon a little bit. Feel free to like into what I just.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alyssa, I really resonate with what you were saying about, you know, there's going to be a learning curve. I think with anything, there's going to be this transition period, and it's going to take some time for people to get used to, you know, if we are coming back to the office, you know, what is that experience going to look like? And I think every industry is thinking about that hybrid model, or is it completely remote? You know, we don't know. There's a lot of things that are up in the air, but I think, you know, at the forefront of everyone's mind, especially in food service, you know, we're looking at trust and safety, making sure to put those at the forefront, and designing processes and services and products that have those two aspects in mind, first and foremost.
Do you think, Kristen, that people are looking more towards immune boosting foods right now in the face of COVID? Obviously, everybody's a little nervous about, am I going to get it? Am I not going to get it? How do I safeguard myself? What are you noticing?
Yeah, you know, I actually have had some clients ask me this question about, you know, are there certain nutrients or vitamins that I should be taking, or specific types of foods that will boost my immunity? And, you know, with the science right now, we know that there really isn't a particular type of food or a food group that can 100%, you know, cover all colds, flus, or be preventative to COVID. So if you hear anything like that out on the web, it's absolutely not true. Always view it with a grain of salt. But that isn't to say that there aren't those individuals who are looking to increase foods that are high in, you know, antioxidants, or high in vitamin C, A, D, and more people who are trying to still have these healthy habits of introducing more fruits and vegetables into their diet, which I always say is one of the best ways that we can safeguard our immunity. The other thing that we're seeing is the rise in probiotic and prebiotic foods, things that are going to be good for our gut. And we know that there is a direct correlation with how healthy our gut is with how our immunity is as well. We know it's a really interesting thing, and I promise I won't get too sciencey, but there is an actual immune boosting function where if we're cultivating the right types of bacteria in our gut, the bacteria can actually then recruit immune cells, they call T regulatory cells, to actually help fight infection and boost immunity. So that has always been a trend, and I think that's going to continue to be a major trend moving forward.
So would there be like
Absolutely.
one superfood, Kristen, that you would suggest that can really help these recruitment activities?
I would say getting more fermented foods into the diet, especially live cultures. So we know with probiotics, they're not actually the same. Fermented foods are not the same as probiotics. And we have to be very careful about throwing those two terms together, because a lot of probiotic foods don't necessarily have the live cultures that are those beneficiary bacteria that are actually going to survive down into our gut and populate. They're quite transient as they move along. We don't know what's going to stick in there, but we do know that increasing more fermented foods in the diet, increasing things like fermented dairy products, kimchi, tempeh, different types of fermented foods, plant-based alternatives, those are going to increase the amount of fiber, which is going to feed the gut bacteria that's in there, make sure that they don't starve. And also it's going to help boost the chance that you'll have a good bacteria that's going to stay in there and then have those immune boosting functions. But that's still a relatively new area in the science, and researchers are still figuring out, you know, which bacteria is beneficial for what. So we can just say, as a catch-all for now, eat more fruits and vegetables, especially high fiber foods, and consider eating more fermented foods as part of your diet.
I
So,
definitely think gut health is a trend right now as well. I think people are very much so catching on to the fact that like gut health is everything. And even like kimchi, like you're going to you see it now, like more like packaged goods on the shelves, like people are picking up kimchi and eating it more, or like, I mean, everyone is drinking kombucha, but there's like, I think there's more of this like craving and like understanding to do that during this time, which is like very interesting that people are being more aware of their gut health. I feel like it was like this underground trend that is now being way more socialized.
But do we all agree, ladies, that even on the kombucha, like it's become so trendy, some of these hyper sweet, like tons of sugars, kombuchas that we see kind of out there on the grocery store shelves, I feel like they've adulterated something that was very pure and something that was very healthful. And now, you know, I mean, like the sugar, it can't be, I mean, obviously, you know, we understand that these healthy gut bacteria, they eat, but they eat the fructose, don't they, Kristen? They don't really eat like the pure sugars. So how do you feel about these high sugar kombuchas, ladies, that we're seeing on the shelves?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that where people are saying, oh, kombucha is really great because it's a fermented food. And it's really important as consumers to be very savvy when you go to the store. You know, I always recommend people get familiar with nutritional labels. I know it's kind of one of those things that's not really fun. You just want to look at an item, look at the packaging and say, yeah, that looks good. I'm attracted to it. And I just take it off the shelf. But I think now, you know, as consumers are, you know, demanding for transparency, we want to know what's in our food. Looking at the ingredients will usually tell you what's in the food, and not just the nutritional facts panel, but also the ingredients list, because sometimes the panel can be a little bit confusing and sometimes misleading. So we need to look at the actual ingredients in it. And in regards to, you know, high sugar kombucha, you know, it's one of those things where I think the more sugar you add into certain items, the less of the nutritional value it's going to give to you. It might taste delicious, but it probably, depending on how much sugar they add in it, it wouldn't be better than, you know, drinking juice or drinking soda even. Although soda, I think, is one of those things where I think it's pretty taboo for everyone, but there's still a very strong soda drinking crowd out there. But certainly, I think if you wanted to drink kombucha, you wanted to have that in your diet, maybe you like the taste of it, consider how much sugar is in it. I would say anything less than 10 grams is pretty good. You know, we have a certain recommended amount of added sugar per day per individual, and the lower you can get on that scale of added sugar in the day, the better off you'll be.
So speaking about, you know, food labels being a little misleading or a little difficult to understand or to ascertain, we have a question from Camille, one of our attendees, and she's asking, do you know of any technology that works out the nutrition content of food so that we don't have to just necessarily depend on those labels?
Are we talking about apps here, or particular types of technology where you can like barcode scan or?
Yeah, I'm assuming Camille probably is referring to like, a software.
Like Fitness Pal and those types of.
Or okay. Yeah, definitely. There are so many apps these days. You probably even have one on your phone, or you know of them. You know, MyFitnessPal obviously is one that is super popular. It syncs with your wearables. And that one is a great way to just track your food and track your nutritional intake if that's what you want to do. I never recommend people to start tracking food unless they have a very specific goal in mind for themselves, because if not, it gets rather tiresome and it's not very sustainable to always be tracking every single thing. And especially if you're cooking something homemade, that's going to be a pain in the butt, basically, to try to input into something like MyFitnessPal. But I think there is a value to those tools. People use them for tracking, especially for weight management. We've definitely seen a lot of people use those. There's barcode scans. The USDA has an application where you can look up the nutritional profile of tons and tons of different foods. So it really just depends on what the user is looking for in terms of the experience, what their goal is, and that should orient you to decide, you know, what is the best type of app or technology to use.
Are there any particular ones just off the top of your head with regards to, let's say, you know, a couple different goals that you would name as trusted applications?
Yeah, you know, again, I think you mentioned MyFitnessPal. You know, I don't specifically endorse them or anything. These are just applications that I've seen my clients use. I've seen a lot of my, you know, community members, family members, friends. You know, they ask me, you know, hey, have you heard of, you know, MyFitnessPal? Or also another one is the Lose It app, or there are so many out there. And it would just take like a whole nother hour just to like go through all the different ones. But certainly meal planning apps are also really popular too. And it's less of the I need to know the specific macronutrients of certain foods, but more of I need recipe ideas, and I want to see pretty pictures and have that inspire me. So again, many different types of apps out there. And if you did a quick Google search for, top 10 apps for X specific goal, weight management, meal planning, et cetera, mindful eating. There's tons of really great applications and technology that are out there, and you can choose which one would suit you best.
Well, because especially right now, Kristen, I think people are already so overwhelmed by the current climate. Last thing we need is another app that's going to cause us to be very OCD about like macronutrients and micronutrients and all this. I think that you're right, that there are some, there are ways that we can kind of manage our choices and make sure that we're making healthy choices without kind of going to the opposite extreme of being way too obsessed about all these tiny details, which then it just becomes a burden. It's not something that empowers you in the end.
I absolutely agree with that. I think when you over manage that, it's like this like extreme, then you swing to another extreme. I think, like she said, really reading the ingredients and making sure there's like they're real. The nutrient, like she said, I don't even know what you call that. The grid becomes very confusing at times, and just I think at least the new generation is really reading labels, and they're very, very much so into that. And I think once that becomes a habit, you feel more confident with just what's in your pantry, what's in like your home, and cooking then becomes a bit more freeing, as you know that you've already like purchased things that will be good for you to consume.
And if you really don't want to worry about that at all, just one more point is then, don't buy foods that have nutritional labels on them. That's another quick and easy way. A banana doesn't have a label on it. I mean, might have a sticker about where it's from and a barcode, but you can easily take that off. An avocado doesn't have one. So really focusing more on those whole unprocessed foods is never a bad way to go.
For sure, for sure. And if you're seeking whole foods in the, let's say, packaged or prepared foods, ready to go foods, then there can be, at least with me, I have a self-imposed standard of like, if there's more than, 5 ingredients or 10 ingredients, depending on the type of food item that I'm looking at, that, I'm not going to go with it, because it doesn't need to have, there's clearly some adulteration that's happened there the more you see items on that ingredient list.
Yeah. And then just speaking about packaged food products and how right now, while we're all kind of dining in more at home than we are dining out, we're buying a lot more packaged food products. I mean, hopefully people are gravitating towards the produce shelf, but not necessarily because we're still also looking for quick, easy convenience. Because we're working from home at the same time and all of that. But we have an interesting question coming here from Andy with regards to the dining in / dining out experience. As we're continuing to see restaurants starting to open back up, trying to navigate the dining in outside for now experience, at least that's what it is here in California. What kind of trends do you see coming up that chefs can be aware of? Do we think that as customers return to the restaurant experience, are they going to be looking to be eating healthy? Are they going to still be leaning more towards comfort foods? Are they going to be looking to dine in at restaurants? Are they going to be staying more at home because that's become the more comfortable, safe experience?
That was a very long question.
Sorry, lots of questions all in one. Do we think people are going to start eating more healthy even in their restaurant experiences? Or are they going to be leaning more toward comfort foods? I guess that's kind of the first question.
And or from the purveyor perspective, do we think that restaurants need to be having certain ideas in mind as to thinking differently as they begin to reopen?
Kristen.
Okay, great. So I think breaking that question apart into 2 separate questions, are consumers, when restaurants are able to open back up, and, are they going to want to go for a salad, or are they going to still want to have a burger? Again, it's going to be highly individualistic. When people go out for dining options, or they want to go for the experience, it's usually some kind of social eating aspect. But even if you're going out to dine alone, you're going to be going for what it is that you're craving at the moment, what it is that you feel like you want to eat, that you miss eating, that you weren't able to eat for many months in the quarantine. When the restaurants start opening back up, you're like, barbecue. That's really the thing that I want to hit. Or maybe there are certain individuals who say, you know, like I really want to go have that salad at Mendocino Farms because I haven't had that in so long. And so there's a lot of, you know, loyalty that customers have to brands, to specific restaurants, especially local restaurants in their neighborhood that they want to champion, they want to support. And when those restaurants start opening back up, you know, I think people are going to be quite generous as long as, and here's the little caveat to that, as long as trust and safety are there. And what I mean by that is transparency is key, and customers need to see safety in action to build trust. And so it can be many things, like seeing, you know, staff cleaning menus, and, you know, if we're talking about the dine-in experience, right, not the takeout experience, but just being careful with high touch surfaces, you know, hand sanitizer stations, socially distant tables. I think if we're able to have those things, and many restaurants and industries are already doing that for welcoming consumers back. And so we tend to feel, at least for myself, I would feel more comfortable going into a dine-in establishment if I saw those protocols in place and there's a guided experience going through it, even with masks and sanitizers and everything. But I think the important thing also, aside from seeing that safety in action, is that, you know, we're not dining at a hospital. We're dining out because we want that experience. And so it's that intimate balance between, you know, how do I create a safe place to dine in, have that experience, but I also want an unforgettable experience. So that's really the challenge that, you know, chefs and restaurant owners have when they reopen is, you know, what can we do with our staff training? Can we smile through a mask? Do we do, you know, nonverbal, you know, gestures, body language, tone, and actually really able to have a curated and preferably customized guest experience to elevate a good visit to one that's unforgettable.
Yeah. And I also think people are going to want to go out and it's like their treat, right? So I do think their trends of what they'll be ordering at first may be a bit more unhealthy. Like, I deserve those chicken and waffles, or like, I deserve this pizza. I think people are very much so are like, not that this has been a traumatic time, but I think there's going to be this offset of like, when you are deprived of something, you sometimes overcorrect. And I think as people get more comfortable, like Kristen said, going out and they see these health precautions and that safety, and it buys trust, people may return more to their original eating habits of ordering something, or if they have that loyalty aspect of like the Mendocino Farm salad, like I'm craving that. Like, I want one of those right now. And they're actually doing a great job. I went there during COVID and they're nailing it. But I do think there's going to be a bit of that overcorrection of like, I don't do this often, so therefore I deserve to eat X, Y, Z, and like really go for it. But I do think as it becomes more commonplace to like eat in out, but I think we are also at the advantage of understanding that we're in California. So I mean, at least me, and that's a bit of a spoiled sense of like, we don't have winter coming. So I think we also have to understand that like, while these amazing like sidewalk outdoor experiences have happened, like we aren't going to be experiencing winter. And so I do think there's going to be another turn of events, unfortunately, and not like, I mean, the restaurant industry has been so nimble, and it's like my heart, and I'm so passionate about it. But I do think different trends are going to come in as we see winter coming, and being unable to eat out outside, I guess. So wherever that leads, I think we won't really be seeing new trends or how this is going to really affect the industry until like 2021 or like Q1 of next year.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, Alyssa, because that is very curiosity provoking. And, you know, we're in California too. And Kristen, you're here on the West Coast as well, I believe. You know, we are fairly spoiled here. You know, and even along the California coast, you know, depending on what community you visit, some communities are more, you know, adept at and adapted to this dining out experience, and others aren't. And we see the struggle there, you know, so it is curious to imagine what it's going to be like as we go into winter, because I think we're all understanding that this will bleed into winter as well. So very interesting indeed, for sure. I think we have did we have another question here we wanted to answer before we run out of time?
So Andy is thanking you for answering the question that I didn't pose entirely clearly. So people are going, Andy says, people are going to use the food in the restaurant as a reward, like Kristen was saying, or no, also Alyssa, as a sense of normalcy for them. So he says, we are nervous for winter here in the Northeast because obviously the outside eating is gone in the wintertime. And then we also had, we wanted to point out that Peggy mentioned that here on the West Coast, obviously we've had the Northern California fires. And so that too has posed some issues for restaurants as they've been trying to continue with outdoor eating, and you've got ash flying in your eyes. It just doesn't seem to be quite as enjoyable. Alyssa, I know, you're out of Food Labs, you're dealing a lot with innovators who are exploring solutions in consumer goods, in food tech, and so on. Are there some interesting innovations coming up in the face of COVID that you would maybe highlight?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think nothing, and like, just to really like highlight Andy, like the heart of hospitality is not going to go away. And the restaurant industry and operators are so nimble and passionate, and just to see the pivots that have happened during COVID has just been a beautiful thing to watch. And there definitely is heartbreak and fear, but one, just believe in everything that you're going to come up with, truly. Innovation wise, I don't think the world is yet ready fully for kitchen robotics, but I do think that happened too soon. It went away. And I think there are going to be new iterations of how we do that well without taking away from the restaurant experience. So a restaurant can fill maybe a fulfillment robot. So before they were trying to replace chefs, and I think that is going to, like, they're learning from iterations of what didn't work to now, hey, let's support a restaurant and just have a fulfillment, like if it's building a bowl or what have you, and like still get the commissary ingredients or the ingredients from a restaurant. So I do see, like I said, there's a lot of hybrids going on of like, we don't want to get rid of old school, but we have to understand that there's going to be some different touch points emerging. And just like the consumer goods, like that bite of chocolate, but you're still getting B12, you're getting some vegan collagen, like there is an upswing and a balance. The better for you foods, those are definitely on kind of like the forefront of people's minds. There's a lot of beverages emerging right now as well, more health conscious when it comes to alcohol consumption. So what does that look like? Alcohol-free beverages where you still feel like you're indulging, or you're still getting like a boost of energy or some experience that may not have to deal with drinking, which it can be a depressant, can also be something that's relaxing. It depends how you engage with it, but that is a trend that's happening, especially during quarantine while we're inside. So I mean, there's definitely interesting things to look towards. I think innovation is an amazing thing. I don't think it will ever replace, like Kristen said, that experience of wanting that like standout experience of going to a restaurant. And I don't think that can be replaced with these innovations, but while we're at home and while we fill those gaps between, I do think there's exciting things coming. And I do think that technology is going to look to support rather than replace in the restaurant sphere and in the operations world, which is definitely encouraging to see.
And if it does, and if it executes it as it should, then that will be technology at its finest. It doesn't exist to usurp, it exists to support and complement. So thank you for that, Alyssa. You're painting just a beautiful image in my mind. So that's very inspiring. Thank you.
So this has been a really dynamic conversation. We've had some great questions come through. It's been great to engage with Kristen and with Alyssa, and obviously their expert insights with regards to just how we continue to navigate this space. We here at Crema Lusso are definitely focused on continuing to innovate and continuing to look for new and unique experiences, new and unique ways that we can engage our consumers. Is there anything else that you, Alyssa or Kristen, would like to input before we kind of say farewell for the moment?
Just thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation to be a part of. I love your product and both of you for facilitating this. And thank you to everyone for joining.
Yeah, just echo Alyssa here. It was a great conversation, and I hope that we'll be able to continue these conversations as these trends actually play out into the future. We are looking forward to a lot of exciting things coming up.
Absolutely. Yes. And I guess if I could throw out a word of encouragement, you know, things might be unsure right now, but there are a lot of people fighting your cause and, you know, looking to continue to create inspiring and unique and special experiences as we continue to navigate this unique space. So we look forward to having you all come back again and, you know, continue to participate in the conversation. We are hosting these webinars right now just once a month. As things start to pick up, maybe even a little bit more than once a month. But thank you again for attending. And thank you again to our panelists, Kristen and Alyssa, for contributing your amazing insights. And everybody have an amazing day.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.